Hello. My name is Noelle Tran, and I bought my mother a $520,000 mountain villa for her birthday. But when I pulled into the driveway, she was sitting outside, in the cold, shaking. And when I opened the door, my sister screamed in my face, "This is my house. Get out." And I walked in anyway. Because I didn't come here to argue. I came here to find out how a gift turned into a war. The road to Estes Park curled like a question I didn't know how to answer. Snow flurries danced across my windshield, and the radio hummed faintly, lost between stations. The road to Estes Park curled like a question I didn't know how to answer. Snow flurries danced across my windshield, and the radio hummed faintly, lost between stations. In the passenger seat sat a birthday cake, lemon chiffon with pale blue frosting, the kind my mother used to make before her hands began to shake. I'd ordered it from a bakery downtown, told them to write "Happy Birthday, Mom" in cursive gold. It looked delicate, almost too hopeful for the day ahead. The mountain air felt sharper than I remembered. My breath fogged the glass as I climbed the final mile, tires crunching against gravel. The villa came into view through the trees, warm beige stone, glass panels glinting against a gray sky. Bigger than the house we grew up in. Cleaner. It was supposed to smell like safety, like everything I'd worked for finally meant something. For a second, I pictured her surprise, the way her hands would fly to her chest, her voice catching. "Noelle, you didn't." But I did. I had poured years of overtime, saved every dollar that wasn't survival, to give her this one thing. A house where she could breathe without worrying about rent or repairs. A home that said, "You mattered enough for something beautiful." When I turned into the driveway, the first thing I saw wasn't the house. It was her. She sat on the stone bench by the gate, coat slipping from her shoulders, fingers clenched around a worn handbag. Her breath came in shallow clouds. For a moment, I thought maybe she was waiting for me. But her eyes were distant, looking toward the road as if hoping someone else would appear. "Mom?" I got out, closing the car door quietly. The air bit at my cheeks. She startled, blinking like she'd forgotten my voice. "Oh, Noelle." Her smile trembled. "You're early. Why are you out here? It's freezing." She hesitated, rubbing her hands together. They needed some space. Just for a bit. The words hung in the air, brittle as ice. "Who's they?" Before she could answer, the front door swung open. The sound was too loud, too practiced. My sister stepped out, framed by the warm glow from inside. Celine. Perfect hair, perfect lipstick, perfect timing. Her tone cut like glass. "This is my house. Get out." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." She crossed her arms, the gold bracelet I'd once given her catching the light. "Mom doesn't need drama tonight." Drama. The word hit me like a slap. I looked at my mother, still sitting small and silent on that bench, eyes glistening. "Mom?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. A quiet surrender. Celine tilted her head, that pitying smirk she used in arguments. "Don't make this about you, Noelle. You always do." Something inside me stilled. The world narrowed to the sound of the wind through pine needles and my heartbeat, steady, slow, deliberate. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why she was even there. I walked past her. Inside, the air was too warm, heavy with the scent of roses and wine. Laughter stopped mid-breath when I stepped into the living room. Two of Celine's friends froze, holding glasses mid-air. Brought in, her husband, looked up from the couch, confusion flickering before he masked it with that polite grin he saved for networking events. Celine's heels clicked behind me. "You weren't invited," she said softly, almost tenderly, like she wanted the words to bruise slower. "I don't need an invitation to my own mother's birthday." Her laugh was short. "You mean my home? You've been gone for years, Noelle. You wouldn't understand how things work now." I set the cake on the counter. The gold letters gleamed under the kitchen lights. No one moved. No one said thank you. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, and somewhere upstairs a faucet dripped. Mom was still outside. Celine brushed past me to adjust the vase of roses on the table. "Don't just stand there. You're making people uncomfortable." Brodin cleared his throat. "Maybe we should." Celine shot him a look, and he stopped. I studied the room. New furniture. Expensive art that didn't belong to my mother's taste. Not a single family picture included me. Only Celine, smiling at fundraisers, holding glasses of champagne, surrounded by people who looked just like her. I ran my thumb along the edge of the cake box, feeling the cardboard give under pressure. My throat tightened. When did you move her things? Celine shrugged. We updated the space. It's more cohesive now. Cohesive, I repeated quietly. The word tasted wrong. She looked me up and down. You always take everything so personally. Maybe if you came around more. Maybe if you asked before replacing everything she owned, I cut in. My voice stayed calm, but it trembled under the weight of everything I hadn't said for years. Celine's smile widened. Still the martyr. Broughton muttered, ladies, maybe not tonight. I turned toward the window. Snow pressed against the glass, soft and endless. My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes, clenched jaw, a woman who'd worked her whole life to earn peace and found none. I walked back outside. The air stung, sharper now. Mom looked up, startled. They don't want me here, I said simply. Her lips parted. They just need time. To what? Rewrite everything again? Tears welled, spilling faster than she could wipe them. Please, don't start. I can't handle another fight. I wanted to say neither can I. But the words didn't come. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were icy. Celine's been helping me. She means well. Helping? I almost laughed. Helping herself to every corner of our history. Behind us, the door opened again. Mom, Celine called sweetly, come inside before you catch a chill. Then, under her breath, you too, if you're staying. Try not to ruin the mood. Mom stood slowly, leaning into me for balance. I steadied her, feeling the fragile bones beneath her coat. We walked toward the door together. Inside, the living room had reset, music playing, wine glasses refilled, laughter rehearsed. My presence was an inconvenience they chose to ignore. Mom disappeared into the kitchen. I stood near the doorway, unseen but suffocating in plain sight. Celine raised her glass. To family, she said. Everyone toasted. I didn't. Her eyes flicked toward me, challenging. I met them and said nothing. For the rest of the evening, I existed on the periphery, helping serve food, clearing plates, pretending I didn't hear the whispers. She always shows up when money's involved. Poor Mom, caught between them again. She's just jealous. She's always been jealous. Each word landed softer than a slap but cut deeper. When the night ended, Celine hugged Mom with a flourish, announced she'd handle the bills and paperwork, and swept upstairs with Broughton trailing behind. Mom touched my arm. Don't be angry. She's just different. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Yeah, different. I walked to the kitchen, turned off the lights, and stood there for a long moment, watching the cake still sitting untouched on the counter. The gold letters had begun to sag, the frosting melting under the heat. Outside, the wind howled through the pines. The house smelled of roses and rich wine. But all I could taste was frost. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in the guest bed, firm, too clean, someone else's sheets, and listened to the wind push against the windows like it was trying to come in and shake the truth out of us. My body stayed still, but my thoughts ran miles. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember if my name had ever been carved into this house at all. I already knew the answer. Still, I kept searching. When morning light filtered through the blinds, soft and gray, I slipped out of bed. The hallway creaked under my feet, but the rest of the house held its breath. I padded past the closed doors, past framed quotes about family and balance, Celine's aesthetic, not my mother's, and reached the living room. The fireplace was still warm from the night before. A wine glass half full sat on the coffee table. And then I saw it, lined across the mantel like a shrine. Photos. Framed, centered, smiling. Celine in graduation robes, Celine holding a baby, Celine with Broughton at a gala. I scanned each one carefully. Not a single picture of me. Not from childhood. Not from college. Not even the one of Dad, me, and Mom at my white coat ceremony. My mom had cried that day, I remember that. But maybe I only remember it because no one else did. Something in me buckled. Quietly. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was the hollow thud of being gently erased. I moved to the bookshelf. A new collection of books, Mindful Mothering, Wellness Retreat Planning, Healing Your Inner Circle. Titles she probably never read. Just props to complete the vision. I looked toward the dining table. That was real. That table used to be ours. Until last night. Celine had hovered over it like a hostess, pointing out the vegan options she'd prepared but clearly catered. Broughton made a lazy joke about my sudden visit. "We didn't expect company," he said, fork pausing mid-air. I'd tried to sit beside Mom, but Celine's eyes flicked toward the end chair. "That seat's taken." No one offered me another. So I'd stood, awkward and invisible, until Mom finally mumbled something about me taking her seat instead. I did, but the food tasted like cardboard and pride. This morning, I ran my fingers along the backs of those same chairs. The one I wasn't allowed to sit in. The one they saved for someone else. In the hallway, I passed a room with the door cracked open. Inside, makeup spread across the vanity, a curling iron still warm. Celine's things. Next to it, a suitcase. Designer. Open. As if this had always been her place, and I was the intruder. I moved back to the kitchen. It smelled of lemon oil and coffee. My mother stood by the sink, stirring a cup with slow, careful movements, her eyes on the backyard. "Morning," I said softly. She startled. "Oh. Noelle." A pause. "You're up early." I waited. Hoped for something more. But nothing came. I opened the fridge to find my cake still there, untouched. The writing smudged, the corners wilted. I closed it slowly. "They didn't cut it," I murmured. She didn't turn. There was already dessert. Of course there was. The silence between us thickened. "They've been helping a lot, you know," she offered after a moment. "Celine handles the bills. Broughton knows about investments. It's been easier." "Easier than what?" I asked. She finally turned to face me. Then struggling. "You weren't here." The words weren't cruel. They weren't even angry. But they landed like a cold slap. And worse, they made sense to her. "I was sending money," I said. "For years." "I know. But you let them move in. Change everything. Replace everything." Her shoulders sagged. They meant well. I couldn't speak. I only nodded. A small, broken nod that didn't mean I agreed, just that I heard her. Later that afternoon, they hosted a brunch. "Just a few friends," Celine said. "Wellness people. Clients, maybe. Or potential ones." The house buzzed with light conversation, soft music, the scent of lavender diffusers. I stayed in the kitchen, clearing dishes before they piled. It was habit, not offer. Old muscle memory. Like when I was 13, washing Mom's teacups while Celine danced in the living room to pop songs she barely understood. Broughton walked in, looked around like he owned the place. "I thought you weren't coming," he muttered, not realizing I was near the sink. "I live here," I said. He chuckled. "Do you?" I turned to face him. "You don't either." He raised both palms. "Whoa. I didn't mean it like that. It's just, Celine said you usually vanish." I stared at him. "She said what?" He backpedaled. "Just you like your space. Big career. Independent. You've always been the strong one." I dried my hands slowly. Funny how the strong one never got a room here. He didn't answer. Just left. That said enough. That evening, I found myself folding napkins and stacking them in the pantry. No one asked. It was just what I did. And that's when I heard her. Celine, speaking on the phone, voice low and sharp. From the hallway vent, her words echoed clearly. "She's just guilt-tripping Mom. She always does this. Shows up, makes things awkward, and then disappears again." Pause. "No, I'm not worried. The house is safe. It's under control." Another pause. Laughter. "She won't do anything. She never does." I stood frozen. One hand gripping a napkin like it was a lifeline. My heart didn't pound. It simply paused. She said it so casually. So confidently. Like I was already out of the picture. Like my presence was just a flicker, something to swat away. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I folded the napkin. Slowly. Precisely. Set it in the drawer. Then I walked out the back door, into the cold. I stood there for a while, watching the mountains blur in the twilight. The air was sharp, but it helped me think. I remembered my father's voice, once telling me, some storms don't come with thunder. Some just arrive, silently, and change everything. Maybe I had been the quiet one. The one who didn't fight. The one who sent money instead of showing up. But I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. I left the porch when the sky had just started to pinken. The wind had calmed overnight, but the mountain fog rolled in low and thick, wrapping around the trees like a warning. Inside, the villa still slept. That hush before people woke up was always my favorite. No performance, no pleasantries. Just breath and stillness. For once, I wanted the house to breathe with me. I made coffee. The machine groaned louder than it should have, like it resented being used this early. As it sputtered to life, I leaned against the counter, watching the slow drip. The smell, rich, dark, should have brought comfort. It didn't. I opened my laptop. It had been weeks since I let myself go back into the files. I'd told myself it didn't matter anymore. That keeping receipts meant I hadn't forgiven. But there they were. Dozens of transactions with my name at the top and nothing below it but numbers and silence. $1,400, Mia's braces. $800, school trip for Logan. $3,200, back rent when brought in, lost his consulting contract. It kept going. Scroll after scroll. Transfers, Venmo notes, wire confirmations. The occasional heart emoji from Celine, back when she still pretended gratitude. Each entry felt like a breath I gave away for someone else to live more comfortably. Quietly. Without credit. They say love isn't about keeping score. But that only works when both people are playing fair. The creak of the stairs made me shut the screen. Mom entered the kitchen in her robe. Her slippers barely made a sound, but I felt her before I saw her. She offered a soft smile, eyes still swollen with sleep. "You're up early," she said, easing into a chair. "So are you." She nodded and reached for the sugar bowl. I waited until her spoon clinked the side of the mug. "Do you remember the van you drive?" She blinked. "The Odyssey? Of course. I paid for that." Silence. She stirred again. "Too long. Too slow." "I know," she said finally. "That was 8 years ago." I didn't forget. I watched her sip her coffee. Steam rose gently. "You never said thank you." Her eyes dropped. "I thought you didn't need one." I did. I needed it more than I ever let on. But that window had closed. Now it would just sound like guilt, and I wasn't here for guilt anymore. I cleaned my cup and stepped away. She called after me. "Noelle, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said over my shoulder. "I'm just noticing." Upstairs, I went to the storage drawer I hadn't opened in years. Beneath old linens and out-of-season decorations was the photo album Dad used to update. Leather-bound. Dusty but familiar. My fingers hesitated before I turned the first page. There I was, age 2, standing on unsteady legs. Dad had written in the margin, "First steps, Noelle." The letters were firm but curved, like he was trying to be both clear and kind. There were more. Me with a science fair ribbon. Me in the backyard with a garden hose. Me in scrubs, holding my med school acceptance letter. The photos stopped abruptly the year he passed. Celine's pictures took over the shelves after that. But here, this book still had my name in it. A lump rose in my throat. Not from sadness. From something quieter. A memory being acknowledged. I ran my hand over the paper slowly, like I was tracing my own outline. "Don't ever shrink to fit their version of family." That's what he told me on the day I left for college. I hadn't thought about those words in years. Maybe because I had shrunk. I'd folded myself small to make room for their loudness, their chaos, their crises. I thought that was love. But love doesn't ask you to disappear. Downstairs, voices grew louder. Celine's voice cut through the quiet like it owned the walls. "She's digging through old boxes," she said to brought in. "That's what she does. Picks at old wounds. Then blames us when they bleed." He mumbled something I couldn't make out. "Celine again, you'll see. She'll stir everything up, make Mom cry, then leave. She always leaves." I closed the album gently. What they didn't realize was that this time, I wasn't here to leave. I was here to stay. Not in the house. In the story. In the truth. I walked downstairs slowly, my fingers still brushing the spine of the album. They stopped talking when they saw me. Celine arched a brow. "Morning." "Morning," I replied. Mom looked between us. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said, placing the album on the coffee table. "Just remembering things." Celine scoffed. "You always were dramatic." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened the book. Turned it toward Mom. Pointed to the page where Dad had written my name. She looked. Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like she might say something. But she didn't. Broaden picked up his keys. I've got a call. Back in an hour. Celine followed him. Make sure you say hi to Marcus for me. The door clicked behind them. Mom stayed seated. I poured her another cup of coffee. Set it gently in front of her. She looked up at me. I wasn't just the one who helped, I said quietly. I was the one who held it all together. She flinched. Just slightly. And they built a life pretending I didn't exist. I didn't need her to apologize. But for the first time, I saw it in her face. She knew. 2 days later, the air outside thickened with the promise of rain. The mountains were wrapped in a dull haze, the kind that made distance disappear. Inside, the house hummed with low voices and the faint sound of footsteps. I'd learned that silence here was rarely peace, it was preparation. When I came down the stairs, I froze halfway. The front door was open, and a woman's laugh echoed through the entryway. A couple stood there, strangers, holding luggage. Their kids trailed behind, each with a tablet in hand. Celine was all charm and smiles, her tone dripping with practiced warmth. Welcome. I'm so glad you made it before the weather turned, she said, pressing a key into the woman's hand. The kids will love the upstairs loft. It's such a peaceful escape up here in the Rockies. I stepped forward slowly. Who are they? Celine turned, pretending surprise. Oh, Noelle. You're up. Who are they? I repeated. Her smile didn't waver. Guests. Weekend rental. Just until we finalize the retreat schedule. The man looked at me curiously, half smiling. You must be family. I forced a nod. Something like that. The woman adjusted her scarf. This place is gorgeous. You're lucky to have such a generous sister. I looked at Celine. She looked right back, eyes bright with defiance. Mom appeared behind me, startled by the sound of voices. Celine, what's going on? Celine brushed past me. Mom, it's just a short stay. We're not using the house this weekend anyway. Mom frowned. You didn't ask. Ask who? Celine's tone hardened. I'm just helping. You said you wanted to cover the taxes. This helps. I could feel my jaw tighten. You're breaking HOA rules. Celine's laugh was light, airy. You're exaggerating. It's one weekend. HOA doesn't care if it's one night, I said quietly. She turned fully toward me. You won't report it. My voice stayed even. You're sure? Her smile faltered for half a breath. Then she turned back to the guests, voice syrupy again. Please, make yourselves at home. Mom tried to speak, but Celine drowned her out with directions to the trailhead and grocery store. I watched as she helped the kids carry their bags inside. One of them called her Miss Celine, like she was some friendly innkeeper. When they disappeared upstairs, the house went quiet again, except for the steady tick of the clock. Mom sighed. She's trying, Noelle. She thinks this will help. I turned to her. Help who? She rubbed her hands together. We've been behind on utilities. She's worried. I exhaled slowly. She's worried about control. Mom's face fell. Don't make this harder. I'm not making it harder, I said softly. I'm just not pretending anymore. She looked down. You always sound so cold when you talk like that. Because you mistake boundaries for coldness. My tone was steady, but it hurt to say it. Celine reappeared a moment later, brushing non-existent dust from her sleeve. Well, she said, I hope you can behave for a few days. The guests deserve quiet. Quiet? I asked. Like the kind that keeps people from noticing what's wrong? Her smile froze. You really don't know when to stop, do you? No, I said. Not anymore. Her laugh was short. You never change. You love drama. You love ownership, I replied. Mom stepped between us, her voice shaking. Enough. Both of you. Celine looked at her gently, the shift in tone instant. Mom, don't stress yourself. She'll calm down. I stared at the floor, then at Mom. You see what she does? Mom's lips pressed together. She's trying to help. By breaking the law? By surviving, Mom said, voice small. Celine smiled again, the perfect daughter restored. We'll talk later, Mom. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. Upstairs, my old room had been turned into a storage closet. Boxes of Celine's wellness products lined the walls, candles, oils, brochures. A life branded in pastel fonts. I sat on the edge of the bed, my chest tight. In the drawer of the nightstand, I found my old journal from med school. The leather was cracked, but the pages still smelled faintly of coffee and stress. I flipped through until I found the margins where I used to scribble thoughts between exams. Buy peace for Mom. Even if it costs everything. I read it 3 times, feeling the weight of my younger self's devotion pressing back at me. I'd meant every word. I'd built my life around that promise. But the house I'd given for peace had turned into proof of my silence. I closed the book and whispered into the still air, not anymore. From downstairs came the sound of children's laughter. The kind that should have been comforting but instead felt wrong, like joy had moved into the wrong home. I went back down to the kitchen. Celine stood there with a clipboard, checking boxes on a printed list. Inventory? I asked. She didn't look up. Just keeping track. If we're running a business, we need order. It's not a business, I said. It's our mother's home. She smiled faintly. Correction. It's my responsibility now. You mean your profit? Her eyes flicked up. You really think you're better than me, don't you? I think I remember who paid for this place. That landed. She went still. Then she laughed, low and slow. Money doesn't make you moral, Noelle. You always think doing good things gives you power. Power wasn't the goal, I said quietly. Stability was. Then maybe stop shaking everything up. She looked me over, voice soft but laced with venom. You hate seeing me win, don't you? You hate that Mom trusts me now. She doesn't trust you, I said. She fears losing you. That broke her smile for good. Get out of my kitchen. I didn't move. Out, she said again, sharper. Mom entered, carrying folded towels. Her eyes darted between us. Please. Not here. Celine put a hand on her shoulder. Mom, she's trying to ruin this for us. Us? I asked. When did us stop meaning all 3 of us? Mom looked down. You 2 are impossible. Celine pressed the advantage. She's jealous. She can't stand that I finally built something. I almost laughed. You built it on someone else's name. Celine's jaw tightened. You think this house made you special, but you can't own love, Noelle. I never tried, I said. I just thought it should be earned. The air felt heavier than the storm outside. Celine turned to Mom, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. I'm going out with the guests. They want a local tour. Mom nodded, weary. When the door shut, the quiet that followed wasn't peace. It was exhaustion. Mom sat at the table. Her voice trembled. You don't have to fight her. I'm not fighting, I said. I'm drawing a line. She reached for my hand. Don't lose yourself over this. I gave her a tired smile. That's what I'm trying to fix. As the first drops of rain hit the window, I felt something shift. Not victory. Just resolve, the kind that grows slowly, quietly, after too many years of waiting for permission to speak. Downstairs, the laughter of strangers filled the rooms I'd built for family. I listened to it fade as thunder rolled farther away. She forgot I could write checks. But she also forgot I could draw lines. Morning light crept through the blinds in thin, colorless lines, cutting across the desk like slivers of ice. The house was quiet again. The guests had left, and Celine was out running errands, or running control. Either way, the silence didn't comfort me. It just gave me room to notice the details I'd ignored before. The office smelled faintly of cedar polish and perfume that wasn't Mom's. I opened drawers one by one, looking for nothing in particular and everything at once. Bills. Bank statements. HOA notices. I expected clutter. What I didn't expect was order, the kind that comes from someone trying to look responsible. Near the back of the drawer, under a stack of brochures for something called the No Wellness Experience, I found a manila folder. My name wasn't on it, but Mom's was, written in Celine's handwriting, too neat, too deliberate. Inside was a single-page document, notarized, stamped, official. Temporary authority for property management, granted to Celine No. I read it twice. The language felt intentionally foggy, legal enough to intimidate, soft enough to slip past doubt. The signature at the bottom looked wrong. Mom's cursive usually tilted upward, hopeful even in small ways. This one slanted downward, tired, almost trembling. I closed my eyes, trying to steady the slow burn in my chest. When Mom came in a few minutes later, I was still holding the paper. Did you sign this? She blinked. What is it? You tell me. I set it on the desk between us. It gives Celine authority over the property. Her face paled. She said it was just a form, something for the taxes. Did you read it? She told me it was harmless. She told you, I repeated softly. And you believed her. Mom sank into the chair, her hand shaking as she reached for the paper. She wouldn't lie to me. She said it would help. Help who? She didn't answer. Her silence filled the room, thick and heavy, like a second atmosphere. Before I could say anything else, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Celine appeared at the doorway, sunglasses perched on her head, a shopping bag dangling from her arm. She looked like someone who never expected consequences. Good morning, she said lightly. What's all this? I held up the document. This? What did you have Mom sign? Her smile didn't waver. Don't start, Noelle. It's not illegal to help your own mother. Unless you think she's not competent. The jab was clean. Cruel. Designed to make Mom flinch, and she did. That's not what I said, I replied. Then what's the problem? Celine set her bag down. You weren't here, remember? Someone had to handle things. You mean handle ownership? She laughed softly. You really love making everything sound sinister. I'm managing things, that's all. For your business, I said. She raised a brow. You make it sound like a crime to want success. Mom whispered, girls, please. Celine turned to her, voice dripping with sweetness. Mom, you know I'm just keeping things organized. You said yourself it was too much for you alone. Mom looked torn, like a child caught between two stories she couldn't verify. I took a slow breath. This isn't organization, Celine. This is theft dressed in paperwork. Her eyes flicked with something sharp. Big words for someone who gave up responsibility years ago. I didn't rise to it. I just folded the paper carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and said, you should stop before you forget whose name is on the deed. Celine's tone softened to mock sympathy. You still don't get it. You can't own family, Noelle. Houses. Cars. Bank accounts. None of that makes you the better daughter. I never wanted to be the better daughter, I said. I just didn't want to be erased. The words landed heavier than I expected. Even Celine didn't have a ready answer. She just adjusted her glasses, picked up her bag, and left the room. After she was gone, Mom whispered, why do you two always fight? Because one of us keeps pretending it's not a fight. She rubbed her forehead. You think I don't see what's happening? I think you see it, I said gently. You just can't admit it. Her voice cracked. She's still my child. So am I. For a moment, she met my eyes. I saw the exhaustion there, the kind that doesn't come from age but from years of explaining someone else's behavior. When she left the room, I sat at the desk again. My pulse still hadn't slowed. I turned on the computer, half out of habit. The desktop was cluttered with icons, receipts, scanned letters, wellness documents. One folder caught my eye, retreat proposal, draft. Curiosity 1. The file opened to a 20-page presentation. Logos, pricing tables, investor notes. The header read, The No Wellness Experience, Healing Through Legacy. The house. My mother. Our name. All reduced to marketing. Each slide hurt worse than the last. There were photos of the villa, interior shots I hadn't taken. The same rooms I'd paid for now staged for strangers. A quote from Mom under a picture of her on the porch, this home is our sanctuary. A place of renewal. She never said that. Celine had created a world where I didn't exist, but my contributions decorated every inch of it. I stared at the last slide. Projected annual profit, $86,000. So that was the price tag on betrayal. I forwarded the file to myself first, then to the HOA compliance officer whose number I'd found in the paperwork. In the subject line, I typed, unauthorized use of private property, 24 Crestview. Then I attached the signed authorization form as proof. My hands trembled, but not from fear, something steadier, colder. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was responding. I glanced at the window. Outside, the fog had begun to lift. The mountains looked sharper now, defined against the thinning mist. The kind of clarity that hurt at first but promised truth beneath the sting. When I heard Celine laughing downstairs, I didn't rush to hide what I'd done. I saved the email, hit send, and whispered, you should have known I was keeping records too. Mom appeared at the doorway again, hesitant. "You're not making trouble, are you?" I turned to face her, softer now. "No, Mom. I'm making things right." She looked uncertain, but she didn't argue. Just nodded faintly, like someone who still believed in keeping peace, even if it meant standing in the ruins. When she left, I looked around the room again, the polished desk, the brochures, the documents that tried to rewrite us all. For years I'd told myself I'd built this house for her peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace. It's just quiet chaos. I closed the drawer, took one last breath, and said to no one, "She thought I came back to visit. I came back to remember whose name is on the deed." By nightfall, the rain had found rhythm against the windows. The house felt heavy, each creak and sigh of wood carrying a warning. I sat on the couch, listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything that sounded like control returning. But Celine and Broden were gone. Somewhere out there, spinning stories and business plans while I watched our mother fade inside this hollow, borrowed peace. Mom had been quiet all day, a flush rising across her cheeks, her movements slow. By evening, I found her sitting in the kitchen, her head in her hands, the steam from her untouched tea rising into nothing. "Mom," I said softly, touching her shoulder. She startled, then blinked like she'd woken from a dream she couldn't explain. "It's just the weather. Makes me dizzy." Her skin was warm, too warm. I helped her to the couch, fetched a damp towel, and pressed it gently to her forehead. Her breath came shallow, uneven. She tried to wave me off, but her hand trembled. "I told Celine I wasn't feeling well," she murmured. "She said not to worry, that she'd handle things." "Handle what?" She tried to remember. "Some paperwork, I think. She said it was just a form. She promised she'd take care of me." My chest tightened. "You already did, Mom. You took care of everyone. You shouldn't have to keep proving it." She closed her eyes. "She's just trying to help." The words hit me harder than before. Always that same defense, the same plea to understand the daughter who kept taking more than she gave. I stayed beside her until her breathing steadied. The storm outside grew louder, wind scraping across the roof like it wanted to come in and shake the truth loose. When I tucked the blanket around her, she reached for my wrist. "Don't fight with her," she whispered. "It's not worth it." I smiled faintly. "I'm not fighting anymore, Mom. I'm setting things right." After she drifted off, I went to the bookshelf. Something told me to look again, not for Celine's documents this time, but for something older. Something that might remind me there was once a balance here, a reason worth saving. Between two dusty cookbooks, I found a yellowed envelope. My father's handwriting curved across the front, "For Noelle, if she ever needs reminding." My hands trembled as I slid the letter free. "If anything happens, protect your mother. This home should never be a stage." The ink had bled slightly over time, but the meaning stayed sharp. A stage, that's what it had become. Performances of love, recitations of loyalty, all choreographed by Celine. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my purse. Next to it, I placed my lawyer's business card. Two truths side by side, one of blood, one of law. Broden came home sometime after 9. I heard his car crunch the gravel, his low voice in the hall. I stepped out before he could pass. "Where's Celine?" I asked. He hesitated. "She had a meeting." "In a storm?" "She said it was important. Investors." I nodded slowly. "Of course." He shifted, uneasy. "Look, Noelle, you can't keep treating her like she's the enemy. She's trying to build something for your mom. For all of us. By taking everything that isn't hers?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're too hard on her. She just wants control so things don't fall apart." "Things fall apart when you lie," I said quietly. His eyes narrowed, defensive. "You think you're the only one who cares? You swoop in once every few years, throw money at problems, and then disappear. Celine's here. She's present." "She's present like smoke is present," I replied. "It fills every room until you can't breathe." He flinched. "You sound just like your dad." That stopped me for a moment. "That's the best thing you've ever said to me." He didn't stay long after that. The door closed harder than it needed to. I sat alone, listening to the clock tick between thunderclaps. Then I picked up the phone and called Celine. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and casual. "If this is about Mom, I already know. She's fine." "She has a fever," I said. "She needs rest." She's an adult, Noelle. You don't have to manage her like one of your patients. Did you use her illness to get her to sign more paperwork? A pause. Excuse me? You heard me. You're paranoid, she snapped. You wouldn't understand how much responsibility I've had to take on. I'm doing the work you walked away from. I kept my tone even. You used her trust to steal control. That ends now. Ends? Her laugh was sharp. You wouldn't dare tear this family apart. You did that the moment you handed strangers keys to our memories. You always make it about yourself, she said. About your need to be the hero. You think you can fix everything with a checkbook. I can't fix this, I said. But I can stop it. I hung up before she could respond. The storm roared louder. The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. I opened my laptop, logged into my email, and typed a message to my attorney. Attached the scanned document, the retreat proposal, the notarized form. Subject, unauthorized transfer of authority, urgent review. My fingers hovered over the send button. For a second, I thought of Mom asleep downstairs, her frail body curled in blankets that once belonged to her parents. I thought of Dad's letter, folded and safe beside me. Then I pressed send. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like surrender. It felt like movement. I poured myself a glass of water, watching my reflection tremble in the ripples. The woman in the glass looked older, steadier, less afraid. I heard the faint buzz of my phone. A new message from Celine. You're making a mistake. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, if you go through with this, you'll regret it. Mom will regret it. I typed back, Mom deserves peace, not ownership papers she doesn't understand. She responded with a single line, you've always hated me for being stronger. I smiled faintly. Strength doesn't come from control, Celine. It comes from knowing when to stop. No reply came after that. Just the sound of rain softening against the roof. When I checked on Mom one last time, her fever had eased. Her breathing was steady. I sat beside her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. I wish Dad were here, I whispered. He'd know what to say. She murmured something in her sleep, words half-formed, fading before I could catch them. I stood, turned off the lamp, and looked around the room. The pictures on the dresser glowed faintly in the storm light. One of them caught my eye, a family photo from years ago. Dad, Mom, Celine, and me. His arm around my shoulder. The kind of photo where everyone looks whole because the cracks haven't shown yet. They built a house on my silence, I said quietly, the words more truth than anger. Outside, thunder rumbled one last time before drifting into distance. Now, I whispered, they'll learn what happens when I stop being quiet. The next morning arrived quiet, but not gentle. No wind. No thunder. Just that breathless kind of stillness that makes you brace for something worse than weather. I stepped outside, barefoot, the boards of the front porch cold against my skin. A local paper sat at the bottom of the stairs, wrapped in plastic, fat with Sunday confidence. I picked it up, thinking maybe I'd read the obituaries, see if I recognized any names. But the headline hit first. Bold, centered. Sharp. Healing through legacy, the No Sisters and the wellness retreat that's changing lives. I stood still. The cold reached my ankles, then knees. My heart didn't pound. It stilled. I peeled the plastic slowly, as if that would make the lie hurt less. The front page photo showed Celine and Broaden in front of the house. Celine's smile was rehearsed, her hand on Mom's shoulder. My mother looked tired, like someone who had agreed to something she didn't understand. I turned the page. Quotes from Celine. Phrases like emotional stewardship and healing spaces. A side column featured the HOA president praising responsible family enterprises. There was no mention of me. No reference to the person who'd actually bought the house, whose name was on every document they'd buried in drawers. My name didn't appear at all. I folded the paper. Not neatly. Inside, the air felt sharper than the chill outside. I didn't turn on the lights. I wanted the dark. Celine came down 20 minutes later in athletic wear and dewy makeup, as if she were on her way to a photo shoot instead of the HOA meeting she had orchestrated. Morning, she said, brushing past me toward the coffee maker. Did you see the article? Front page. I did. She smiled, pouring her oat milk creamer. They got my good side, don't you think? Did Mom know you submitted her quote? She was part of the process, Celine said casually, stirring. She signed the media release. Did she understand it? She trusts me, she replied flatly. You wouldn't get it. You're right, I said. I don't understand how you can lie that well and still sleep at night. She didn't blink. Truth is subjective. You should know that by now. I was halfway through responding when a knock interrupted us. Edith Monroe stood at the door, her gray curls pulled back, eyes clear behind thick glasses. She held a foil-wrapped plate and a look I remembered from childhood, the kind people wear when they're about to tell the truth, even if it hurts. Hi, Noelle, she said gently. Brought some of my lemon bars. Thought you could use a little sweetness. Thank you. I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. She set the plate on the counter, glanced at Celine, then turned back to me. I saw the article. Celine smiled, stepping forward. Wasn't it lovely? We're so proud of the work we're doing. Edith didn't smile back. I remember your father's funeral. You weren't there. Celine froze. Excuse me? Edith's tone didn't change. Noelle was. She stayed 3 days straight. Helped organize everything, even when the pastor forgot his notes. Celine laughed, too loud. That was years ago. Edith looked at me and smiled. I emailed you something this morning. A photo I took that week. Your hand in your mom's. You were the one who never left. Tears pricked the back of my eyes. I didn't blink. Celine crossed her arms. This feels a little pointed. Truth usually does, Edith replied, turning to leave. See you at the meeting. The silence she left behind was louder than thunder. Broaden came downstairs dressed like a politician, blazer, fake humility. He raised an eyebrow at the tension. Everything okay? Celine kissed his cheek. Of course. Let's go impress some board members. I followed them, not because I was invited, but because I finally understood what I had to do. The HOA building was small, tucked behind the library, its walls lined with framed photos of clean lawns and polite gatherings. People nodded as we entered. Celine moved through the room like a host. Broaden whispered something to a man in a gray tie. Laughter followed. I waited in the back until they started. A projector flickered to life. Celine stood beside it, pointer in hand, voice smooth. We're excited to share our vision for the No Wellness experience. She walked them through slides, floor plans, event proposals, local partnerships. Broaden clicked through charts showing revenue potential. Celine gestured to a final photo, Mom on the porch, wrapped in a shawl. This house has always been a place of healing. Our goal is to open that space to others in need. Murmurs of approval. Then I stepped forward. Before you approve anything, I said, voice steady, you should know who actually owns this property. The room stilled. I walked to the front, reached into my folder, and handed out copies. Date. Trust agreement. A notarized letter from our father. And the HOA violations related to unauthorized short-term rentals. Braden's face changed color. Celine's jaw tightened. This is defamation. No, I said calmly. This is documentation. The HOA president flipped through the pages. These are thorough. Because I've been thorough, I said. While they've been busy building a business off a lie. Celine stepped forward. This is a misunderstanding. We're a family. We're just trying to help our mom. Help her? I turned to her. You used her name, her home, her image, all without consent. That's not help. That's theft. She looked at the board. My sister's angry. That's all this is. I met their eyes. I'm not angry. I'm done being erased. The president cleared his throat. We'll need to review this. Immediately. I nodded. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for the truth to matter. They didn't speak. Not yet. But I saw the shift. The power had moved. Gently. Quietly. But permanently. We left the meeting in silence. Broaden walked ahead, avoiding eye contact. Celine trailed behind, her shoulders stiff. Back at the house, she slammed the door behind her. You just humiliated me. No, I said. You did that when you tried to take what wasn't yours. She pointed at me, hands shaking. You think you've won? I looked past her, to the quiet hallway, to where Mom was resting. I think I finally stopped losing. She didn't speak again. She didn't have to. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself some water, and stood by the window. Outside, the sky was clear. They thought I was just a footnote in their story. But today, I wrote the headline. The glass still felt cold in my hand when the front door slammed shut behind Celine. It wasn't the kind of slam you do out of carelessness. It was calculated, loud enough for me to hear, sharp enough to demand my attention. I didn't flinch. I sipped the water slowly and watched the light fade behind the pine trees. She'd left the HOA meeting scorched, not defeated. And that was dangerous. When she came back into the kitchen, she didn't say hello. Didn't drop her keys into the bowl like usual. She went straight to the cabinet, yanked it open with enough force to rattle the dishes, then slammed it shut again. The second cabinet didn't stand a chance. She gripped the handle and slammed it repeatedly, not looking for anything, just looking to be heard. I hope you're proud, she snapped without turning around. You made Mom look weak in front of strangers. I didn't respond. She spun around. You think this makes you the daughter she loves more? Silence again. You humiliated me, she said, her voice rising. You sat there, handing out papers like you were in a courtroom. Because I said softly. She narrowed her eyes. And what do you think this was before? You think I didn't earn any of this? That I didn't hold things together while you were off playing saint from a distance? Broaden entered the room behind her. Let's not do this here. Celine turned on him so fast I saw him take a half step back. You didn't protect us, she shouted. You stood there like some spineless consultant while she tore everything down. Broaden looked at me. Then at her. Then left. She turned back, her chest rising and falling too quickly. You think this is about a house? No, I said. I think it's about power. And you've had too much of it for too long. She scoffed. You were always jealous. I set the glass down gently. No. I was tired. Tired of watching you rewrite history while I cleaned up after it. She crossed her arms. You're cruel. You don't know what Mom needs. At that moment, as if on cue, our mother's voice came from behind us, low, fragile. Celine. We both turned. Minlon stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. Smaller. Celine walked to her quickly. You should be resting. I've rested enough, Mom said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it held weight. You need to listen. Celine froze. What? Mom looked between us. Then at Celine. You built this with noise. Noelle built it with care. It landed like a gavel in a courtroom. Celine took a step back. Her face crumbled, no tantrum this time. No yelling. Just the realization that her performance had met its final audience. You're taking her side, she asked. No, Mom whispered. I'm taking mine. Celine's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't run. She didn't beg. She just stood there, blinking hard. I walked past her, opened my laptop on the kitchen island, and clicked into the Zoom call already waiting in the background. My attorney's face appeared first, then the notary. The paperwork was already there, digital, neat, final. I need you to verify, the notary said. This is the revocation of property management rights from Celine No, and the transfer of legal and protective authority to Noelle Tran, per the trust originally filed under Lucien Tran. I nodded. Confirmed. Celine stared. You're doing this here? Where else? I said. You made the house your platform. I'm making it mine. She sat down at the table slowly. For once, she had nothing to say. When it was over, I closed the laptop and looked at Mom. It's done. Mom gave a small nod. Thank you. Celine stood. So what now? You kick me out? Change the locks. No, I said. You're still her daughter. But you don't get to be in charge anymore. She looked down at the floor, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted to matter. You did, I said gently. But mattering doesn't mean taking what isn't yours. She left the kitchen without another word. Broaden was waiting in the hallway. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could see the questions behind his eyes, about money, about damage control, about image. None of it mattered anymore. I poured Mom another cup of tea and placed it in front of her. Her hands wrapped around it slowly, gratefully. I'm sorry it came to this, she said. I'm not, I replied. It needed to. She took a sip, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn handkerchief. Your father would have been proud. I smiled. He already was. Outside, the house seemed to breathe differently. Quieter. Lighter. As if it, too, had been waiting for someone to say what needed saying. I cleaned the kitchen in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't sting, it soothes. The kind that makes room for healing. For the first time, she wasn't yelling. And I didn't need to be loud to win. The first full breath I took that morning tasted like cedar and sunlight. I stood on the back deck, cradling my coffee in both hands, the steam curling toward the sky like a quiet offering. Below the railing, the mountains stretched into soft blue humps, still wrapped in patches of snow that hadn't yet surrendered to spring. No footsteps. No shouting. No voices arguing over who controlled what. Just birds. And peace. The villa had finally gone quiet, not in that strained way where people avoid each other, but in the soft kind of silence that follows a long, hard truth. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. That just lets you rest. Celine hadn't come back. Not the next morning. Not that night. Not the day after. She left without slamming the door. No dramatic exit. No final words. No apology. Broaden had driven her to the station 2 days earlier. I didn't ask where she went. He didn't offer. He just returned alone, grabbed his things, and left. Not a word to my mother. Not even a glance in my direction. I heard from someone in town that the retreat pitch was withdrawn. The HOA confirmed the violations and froze all business activity on the property. No one was angry. Just relieved. It was as if the house itself exhaled. I walked back inside and opened the mailbox, something Celine used to treat like an afterthought. Bills. A real estate inquiry. And 2 envelopes addressed to me. The first was from the bank. A check enclosed, proceeds from the sale of the adjacent plot I had added into the trust years ago. A side property Dad and I once talked about turning into a garden. I smiled at the memory. The second envelope was thinner. Inside, a confirmation from the State Education Fund. The college accounts I'd opened for Mia and Logan, Celine's kids, were officially active. I'd used my own name. My own money. Celine wouldn't be able to touch a cent. I'm done rescuing adults, I murmured. But kids deserve a fair shot. Softly, I folded both letters and slid them into the drawer beneath the phone. It felt like closure, not a slamming door, but a window eased shut to keep the peace in. Mom was in the kitchen when I returned, humming to herself, folding dish towels with her usual quiet focus. The tea kettle whistled, and she moved with slow but steady hands. I put the blue cups out, she said. Your father always liked those. I nodded, watching her pour the hot water with care. I remember. She set 2 mugs down. Then, with a small gesture, she reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small cloth bundle. She unwrapped it carefully and placed a jade pendant on the counter. I was saving this, she said. Your father gave it to me on our wedding day. I thought I'd give it to Celine, but I think I waited too long. I touched it lightly with the tip of my finger. It was smooth, cool, heavier than it looked. No, I said quietly. You're right on time. She smiled, not a wide one, but the kind that settled deep and held. We didn't talk about the last week. Not directly. The house, the meeting, the paper trail. We let it hang in the air, like smoke that had finally begun to clear. Instead, we sat at the table, drinking tea, listening to the birds outside. I used to think if I stayed quiet long enough, Mom said softly, things would fix themselves. I looked at her gently. Some things only break in silence. She nodded. I know that now. We sat without filling the space with more words. It was enough to be here. Together. Unhidden. Unclaimed. Later that afternoon, Edith stopped by. She dropped off a pie of blueberry, warm from her oven. House smells different, she said with a wink. Like it knows the right people are in it now. I smiled. Thank you for the photo. She waved her hand. It was just the truth. And the truth's never as heavy as pretending. When she left, I looked around the villa again. The same walls. The same floors. But it felt like mine now. Not because of the deed. But because I could finally breathe in it. I walked past the photo shelf. Some of the old pictures were gone, Celine must have taken them. That was okay. I placed one back in the center. Dad. Holding me on his shoulders, the mountains behind us. Both of us laughing like we'd won something invisible. Peace didn't roar. It whispered. And for the first time in my life, I heard it. Sometimes, the loudest voice in a family isn't the one that yells, it's the one that finally says no. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was about reclaiming space. About remembering that silence doesn't mean weakness. And boundaries are a form of love, too. What would you do if the people you love erased you from your own story? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true, soul-deep stories like this one.